I've been watching a lot of um, videos on religion and losing your religion and, growing out of that indoctrination. And it honestly is not an easy thing. All of the people I've watched who are like me, who are straying away from their religious upbringing, are going through the same things. It is not easy. It's not easy because of the indoctrination when you're small. Anything that we do when our children are small, anything we instill in them is very hard to break as adults. And my mother, my adopted mother, was just, I don't know what to call her, because religious, I don't think she acted religious at home. I think she was religious in the church building when she would go to church. Um, at home, she did crazy shit, and she said crazy shit. And it's when you're a small child and your parental figures tell you things, it's really hard to stray away from the things that they've told you. Even my mother um, told me that sex was a sin, and it's really hard for me to discuss out loud how I feel about that and the things that she told me. And it's from that indoctrination that, I had a hard time with it. I had a hard time with it being okay to be open about your sexuality and your desires and things like that. And it's always going to be that way. I'm 54. That's something in me that is never going to break. Um, I'm just glad that my children aren't that way. I'm glad I did not instill that in them, because they're very open. They talk about they talk about things, and they're not afraid to talk in front of me, because I'm not going to belittle them or tell them they're going to hell or any of that. But I also remember being very small, like old enough to read, 7, 8, 9, 10, and started questioning things in the Bible, because I was seeing the discrepancies already. I was seeing that, well, this doesn't make sense, because over here it said this, and why would God do that? And how did that happen at that? How were they able to build an ark like that? How did they get all of the animals two by two? I would think, like, there's hundreds of thousands of millions of animals, and they got them in one boat. I question things, and when I question things, first my mother told me, read your Bible, believe your Bible. God has everything laid out there for you to know. So then I would read the Bible, and I'd be like, Mama, this doesn't make sense. This and that. Oh, well, don't pay no attention to that. But it's in there. It's in there. And you said to trust that word. And then she said, well, listen to what the pastor tells you. And then the pastor would say something dumb, and she would say, well, refer to your Bible. Your Bible tells you everything you need to know. And this for me was a growing process that began when I could read, to be honest. And when I was 9 years old, and they pulled all the children, I think, on a Wednesday night, and were calling all of the young teenagers and small children up to the front to be slain in the spirit. If you've ever been to a Pentecostal church, which I grew up in mostly Pentecostal churches, this was a Pentecostal holiness church, and that slain in the spirit is a scary looking thing to a 9-year-old child. I watched my older adoptive sister go up there, and she was like 13, 12 or 13. And, I watched all the other kids in the church, except for my little brother, because he was on his knees at the pew, like playing with his little Matchbox cars. He was only 7 at the time. Um, and I was the holdout. I was the holdout. And my adopted mother kept saying, Renee, it's your turn. You need to go up there and feel the Spirit of God. I did not want to do it. I'll shorten the story. I've written a little short story on it. You can read that if you want, but just suffice it to say, I did go up there. I still refused, and I was declared to be demon possessed at 9 years old. And I had a hard time with that. Not in the way that you might think, that I would be scared I was full of demons. I think I realized at that moment that every adult in that church was full of shit, and all the kids that were laying down there, you know, acting like they were having a seizure and rolling their eyes in the back of their head and making funny sounds in a supposed different language. Um, I just thought everybody was full of shit. And I started to see it right then and there. And it took me a long time to pull away and to finally say, I don't believe any of that anymore. I do not believe any of it. And I will not be ridiculed and chastised by anybody who does at this point in my life, because I absolutely believe that believing in all of that is a mental illness. I believe that for my mother, it was a way to control, and a way to my adoptive mother, and a way to be better than everybody else. She loved to tell people that they could go to hell for things. And it was something that she said to me all the time, to strangers, to friends and family. She constantly talked about the rapture and how she was going to be swept up in it. And, she was worried about her family that would be left behind. Virtually, just she was the only person going the way she talked. And I realized that she was loco in the cocoa and just narcissistic as fuck. But anyway,